Well, today we're going to talk about employee engagement as a critical response tool to the COVID-19 pandemic that we're all facing. So a little bit, just for those of you that don't know me, my name is Frank Vitale, and I'm the president and CEO of Forge Business Solutions. We're a business consulting agency headquartered in Morgantown, West Virginia. And I'm a U.S. Army veteran as well, spent almost 20 years in the Army. So I'm very proud of our military response to this pandemic that we have. I have previous experience in the banking, finance, education, and human resources areas prior to starting my business in 2017. I'm a West Virginia University proud graduate, as well as a graduate of the Valley Forge Military College. Forge, as I said, is a strategy development and consulting firm. And we have clients in not only in West Virginia, but all over the Eastern United States. And we recently got our first client in California. So we're excited to be growing. Today, we're going to talk about business and economic disruption, how businesses can respond, open and honest communication, key leadership behaviors, employee engagement strategies, and then a post-pandemic climate. And by the way, considering we have a limited number of participants, if someone has a question as we go through, don't feel like you have to wait to the end. So business and economic disruption is all around us. And I think I am in my fourth week of working remotely and from home, as is my wife, and many of you are doing the same thing. So initially, I believe that disruption impacted us substantially, particularly given the fact that news was coming heavy and fast every day and things were changing on a daily basis. And so if you felt disrupted or felt uncomfortable or had some anxiety over that, I think that's very natural. It's important to remember that the people that are around us, our employees, our family members, our friends, are all facing the very same thing. The pandemic has disrupted not only our personal lives, but it's disrupted private, public, nonprofits, all kinds of businesses, and government organizations as well, many of which we all depend on for both customers, but for other levels of support. In my house, for example, education has become a big issue because I have twin girls that are 8 and my son is 11. And like many of your kids, they can't go to school. So we have to make some adjustments and adapt toward that. There are more than 1 million cases of COVID-19 worldwide. Many schools, as I said, and then of course our universities have canceled face-to-face instruction. More than 90 major US retailers are temporarily closed to prevent the spread of the coronavirus. And over the past few weeks, about 10 million jobs have vanished and more than 10 million have applied for unemployment benefits. We're seeing an unprecedented economic climate and a climate of unemployment and concern. Economists are predicting a loss of more than 20 million jobs. And in a new study from Stanley Morgan, there's an estimate of a national deficit to total at least 3.7 trillion in 2020. So this is the bad news. This is the challenges that face us all, but together we can overcome this. We know that if we work together, we can really make a difference. But it's important that we help one another in our personal lives, but also in business as well. Because sometimes when we look at history, some of the greatest things that have impacted our global history has been disruption. Not only our American history and American culture, but worldwide. So how can businesses respond? Well, many ways. But today I'll give you some suggestions based on my research and our research here at Forge and my personal experience as well. You may have your own experiences. You may agree or disagree with some of these, but hopefully they'll be helpful to you. Protect and communicate. It's important that we have effective communication with our employees, our customers, and our stakeholders. And sometimes we forget that people are depending on us to tell them what we're thinking and how we feel as business leaders, because we might think that they're busy or they have other concerns, but they really do want to hear from us. Many of us have not heard from our employers. Many of us have not heard from our customers have not heard from us, or we haven't heard from companies that we're customers of. And then stakeholders is a whole other ball of wax. So in stakeholders, you might have the community at large that depends on you. For example, I see Pat Ford with Therapy Services has joined us. I know that she has patients that she sees, and I'm sure that many of you have patients and customers or other folks that rely on you. And so it's important that they hear from you, and that the community at large is aware that you're of what you're doing, whether you're closed or you're open, you're delaying seeing clients or patients or customers. It's important that you articulate that. A healthy business operation. Follow advised safety guidelines to reduce the transmission among employees. I think many of us are doing that. We've closed our offices. We have found another way to work, maintaining operations from remote locations, allowing people to work from home. And then when necessary, allowing people to take off and not work at all so that they can take care of themselves and their families. It's important to maintain a healthy work environment, and we'll talk more about how to do that. Monitor and assess the current state of the pandemic. So, stay apprised. Don't let it eat you up and spend all of your time in front of a news channel. It can be depressing. So, but do try to stay informed. And when people reach out to you, that way you can speak intelligently about what's going on and not succumb to rumors or concerns that maybe mass population groups from the mass population have, that you'll actually be informed and be able to answer questions, particularly for your patients, your clients, and your employees. And chart your path back to normal. Now, I have normal sort of in quotes there because I think we're all going to have a new normal personally. I think we're learning what our strengths are, and there's nothing like finding out what your strengths are when you're faced with adversity. It's important to have open and honest communication, more now than ever. We've all worked for employers that were reluctant to share information from time to time, or maybe we'd hear that things were going on in the workplace, but no one wanted to confirm that. Well, let me say this, that now more than ever, it's important that we have open and honest communication. And sometimes that may mean that we tell our employees or our patients or our clients or customers that we don't have the answer. And that's okay, at least that's honest. Has your employer sent out communications or updates regarding the coronavirus? This was a survey that went out. 27% said no, 3% were unsure, and 70% said yes. So 70 is a passing score, so that's a great thing. But the 27% that said no, if you're among that 27%, it's important that you reach out and communicate. According to a Gallup poll, 1 in 3 employees worldwide strongly agree that they trust their leadership. So that's about 33%. So that's not really good, in my opinion. I think that's concerning. This is the time to prove that employees should trust leadership. And so 13% of US employees strongly agree that their company's leadership communicates effectively. Again, this is not good. These numbers are not isolated to just this pandemic, but it is important that we understand the history that we're dealing with, the culture that has been so pervasive throughout the world, and in particularly in the United States, that leadership is not thought oftentimes to communicate effectively. It's important to avoid the trust deficit. So no matter what's happened in the past, we can't necessarily go back and fix that. But right now, your employees are looking. People want to be led. They want leadership. We all want it. When we look at the president on TV, when we look at our governor, our health experts, we want to be led. We look to them for hope and optimism. We hang on their words. We hang on the statistics and the numbers and the data that they share. So it's more important now. Be transparent. Do not shy away from the difficult topics. Face them head on. And even again, if you don't have the answer, you don't have the answer. Many employees are saying, well, when are we going to go back to work? Are we going to go back to work? If you don't know, tell them you don't know, and tell them that you're working on it, and that there's an effort afoot to get them back to work if that's true. And don't give them false hope. Be careful about that. And continuously update your employees. If your employees aren't hearing from you on a weekly basis, that's too much. That's going too long. Because think about it, they're accustomed to hearing from you every day. And so if you can't get to them every day, then at least update them weekly. If it's not face-to-face on a Zoom or some other product, then at least make information available and update it on a weekly basis. And you can do that through your website, through your mass communication instruments or tools, through a variety of different mediums. So key leadership behaviors. It's important that we realize that we're humans first, that we're people. And, this is very personal for all of us. And we're all in uncharted territory. Remain positive and remain productive. We've got to keep the engine moving as best we can. I know that many companies have had to shut down the storefront, or you've had to close your lobbies. But at the end of the day, you can still keep things going. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Manage expectations. It's important to make sure that your employees understand that and have reasonable expectations of when they might come back to work. And if there's a chance that you may not be able to bring your whole workforce back, in a reasonable period of time, make sure that folks know that. If you're honest and open and you manage their expectations, they won't be so disappointed in the end. And adapt boldly. Don't be afraid to make bold changes. I think many companies right now, especially small businesses, are finding new ways to adjust. I think about the companies that are, printing 3D masks, that are sewing masks, that are providing food to our students that are in such great need, that are providing food and support to our healthcare workers. Adapt, modify your business, pivot, make changes. Maintain your composure. It's important to, as a leader, that our employees and folks that depend on us for leadership don't consider us to be erratic or to be all over the map, to be uncertain and lack confidence. They're looking to us to be confident. That doesn't mean that we don't go off in our private areas and say our prayers. I think we're all doing that. But at the end of the day, we've got to show that we have our composure in place. And deliver. Make sure that our employees look at us as predictable, and that if we say we're going to communicate once a day or once a week or whatever it is, that we actually do that. Because if we don't do what we say we're going to do, they're going to see that as a concern. Engage for impact. We know that while our storefronts are closed now, the economic impact to our business is going to be longer term. So we need to be prepared for that. And we need to be making plans for that and communicating that effectively. And exercise your fearlessness. Be bold, be strong, be brave. That's what has made America great, is that in the times of difficulty, the world has depended on us as a country, as a nation, to deliver them. And this is no exception to that time. And, great people, we often talk about the greatest generation. Well, They were the greatest generation for many reasons, but one of which was how they responded to adversity. We can do this. We can respond. This is our shining moment. And it's important that we step up and change the lens. Again, as I said earlier, a lot of times if you watch the news, it's so negative, and it's easy to get caught up in that, and folks get down and out. But if we can just change the lens, and I'm not saying rose-colored glasses, but at the end of the day, let's be positive. Let's look at the positives. Look how many people are being tested and not testing positive for the disease. Let's look at that. Look at the great stories of triumph that are coming out of these difficult times. So change the lens on how we look at our pandemic, and change the lens on how we look at the future of our business. Let's be optimistic that we will be strong and that we will get back up and running. Failure to plan is a plan to fail. So to just put your head in the sand is not a good strategy. And in fact, it will lead ultimately, I believe, to the demise of many businesses if they don't engage and embrace what's in front of us. So an employee engagement strategy, these are some recommendations based on, again, research and my experience. Facilitate connectivity. Take a team's approach. We can't do all of this on our own. Utilize your human resources departments if you have those. For some of us small businesses, we don't have the luxury of having that, but we do have often human resource components to our business. Make the tough decisions, and some of you have already done that. We'll talk a little more about that. And release innovation. Let people grow through this time, and let them think outside of the box. It'll make a big difference. So how do we connect? How do we stay connected? Use technology. There are a variety of products out there. We're on Zoom right now, and I appreciate the Morgantown Area Partnership and all of the folks that have helped facilitate this engagement, and they're doing great things, but they're using the tools that are available to them. My business, we're using Zoom, and we're having meetings every week, every couple of days. So use those tools. People respond and feel differently, and different emotions are tapped into when we can see one another face to face, because we presumably care about each other, and when we see each other, it makes a difference, even more so than just hearing each other's voice. So there's Slack, Zoom, Teams, Skype, all sorts of different products, even FaceTime. I think a lot of families are using FaceTime to connect with grandma and the grandkids and those sorts of things. So let's keep doing that. Here, establish some rules of engagement. Have employees, agree to some preferred communication methods or channels. Schedule structured check-ins. Again, I recommend at least once a week, and it doesn't have to be company-wide. It could be utilizing the teams, and I'll talk about that. Video conferencing daily meetings. Again, I think people are enjoying wearing their pajamas to work in the morning, and maybe maybe asking them to get on a video early is not going to make people happy. But come up with a way, give them notice, and come up with a way to ask people to participate on video, because again, I think it connects us more than just voice, and definitely more so than email or text messaging. You can instant message for time-sensitive matters or informal conversations, and I would definitely encourage businesses that have a management level or mid-management, utilize those managers to make sure that they're effectively communicating with their teams. A team's approach, speaking of teams, engage through leadership teams. So if you have departments in your business, use those departments. Leaders, please don't feel like you have to touch base with every employee every day. That's not always conducive. And quite frankly, if you're ineffective with it, then it can create a gap. So empower your leadership, empower your managers, and make sure that you're not only asking them to do this, but you're requiring them to an appropriate extent to have team calls. More than 50% of remote employees say that they feel disconnected from in-office employees. So schedule those team calls. If you need to acquire Zoom or acquire these platforms, some are free, but some you have to maybe get a subscription in order to have enhanced features. Please consider making that investment. It's an investment in your business and it's an investment in your people. But again, channel through teams. Many hands make light work, and it can really make a difference. Address the HR concerns. Now, folks right now, understandably so, are very worried about their benefits, about their pay, and about their future. So make sure that every employee knows the status of their benefits. If they don't know what's going on with their benefits, that's an immediate needed correction, because benefits are fundamental to who we are as a person. It's stability, it's security, particularly when families are involved. So no matter what the news, good or bad, make sure that every employee and talk with your leadership about your management. If your employees don't know the status of their benefits, then that needs to be addressed. Every employee should know. Mobilize your recruitment efforts. Now, what do I mean by that? Now, if you were in the process of recruiting employees to fill positions before you had to make a modified operations plan or change your business model, make sure that you get back out to those recruits and let them know the status of their interview process, or if you had offered them a job, let them know where they stand. It's important because it speaks to the integrity of your organization. Those individuals, whether you had offered them a job or not, they're part of the process, and you want to make sure that they understand where they stand. Ensure that your HR team is available. Now, again, they might be available remotely. You might have to work out office hours, call-in times, etc. But have your HR team available, and then adapt performance management techniques. So what do I mean by that? Well, how are we managing the output or productivity of our employees? We're not going to be able to manage it necessarily the way we used to. So it's important to make sure that you adapt those techniques as best you can to allow people to be successful. Make the tough decisions. Focus on sustainability, the long term. Identify what your options are and understand the values and risks of each option. Whether it's laying employees off or going to a reduced schedule, make sure that you identify what it is that you can do. Understand the values and the risks of each of those options. Because here's the important thing for me, at least in my business. I need to preserve this business in a way that people have a place to come back to. And if people have a place to come back to this business, then we're going to have work in a future. If I don't make the tough decisions now, if you don't make the tough decisions now, unfortunately, employees may not have a place to come back to. So that's important. So sustainability is essential. Stabilize your business and assess its financial position. Now, you may need to get help with that. You may need to work with your accountant. You may need to work with other support strategists like myself and others are out there to help you. Your kitchen cabinet, so to speak, people that you rely on to run your business on a daily basis. But you need to assess your financial position and make sure that you're putting sustainable measures in place. An option may be to manage your shifts. Instead of having 8-hour shifts, maybe you have 6-hour shifts or 4-hour shifts, so that you're giving your employees some work as opposed to no work at all. And again, this may not apply to every business. Consider an around-the-clock model, especially if you have to have people come into an office. Maybe you bring in 2 people for a 4-hour shift every 4 hours on a 24-hour basis. That may seem odd to you. It may be something that you've never done before, but consider it. Consider things that are sort of out of the box. And then of course, working remotely. We're all doing that to some extent, but try and empower your employees to be able to do just that. And release innovation. This is one of my favorite things to do during a challenging time like this, but empower your employees to think outside of the box. For example, maybe you establish a reward program for idea generation, and then you give a bonus to somebody who comes up with a way to either maintain current customers, to grow your customer base during this difficult time, to have cost-saving measures. There's a variety of things that you could reward that actually could impact your bottom line. Wouldn't it be something that if during this challenging time, your business emerged with some new approach, new solution, new product that actually, could help grow your business? Wouldn't that be amazing? And I believe that as leaders, we should be leaning into this challenge and not leaning away from it. In the post-pandemic climate, we don't know quite what that's going to look like, but preserve the ability to reopen. As I said earlier, it's imperative that our employees have a place to come back to. And maybe we can't rehire every employee as soon as we reopen our doors, but if we work hard at it, the idea would be that at some point we would be able to invite those employees back to come back to work for us. Now, if they move on, they move on, but it would be great to invite them back. And then to even grow and thrive through this challenging time. Historically, employers have had the upper hand on employee relationships. What do I mean by that? Well, for generations, employers have had sort of an upper hand because employees, have bills and obligations to meet. They have families to provide for. And so, employees can't just up and quit their job, although occasionally some do. But at the end of the day, most of us go to work, with some level of concern that, we have to perform and perform hard or we'll lose our job. Things are going to change, though, for employers that, in my opinion, things are going to change for employers that don't do the right things by their employees during this challenging time. If you don't communicate with them, if you don't treat them well, they may not quit right now because times are tight. But when they have the choice, they'll move on and they'll go to an employer that they believe will treat them better. And I think we're going to see a major shift, and we're going to see quite a bit of turnover after we get back to the new normal with regards to employers that did not do the right thing by their employees. Now, if you're doing the right thing, you're going to become an employer of choice, a place to be, and an employer of choice. So when the dust settles, employees are going to have choices. So, to stay or not to stay. So make sure we treat them well. And there's no middle ground on this. You're either doing right by your employees, doing the right thing, doing your very best, being honest and open, or you're not. There's really no middle ground there. So my encouragement to you is to do the right thing at all times. I have a list of the references that we've used. Happy to share these with you in the Power Deck. If you'd like that, please feel free to reach out. And let's see. Yeah. So at this time, I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Frank, this is Russ. One of the challenges, we have all these mechanisms to link up with our employees, but what are some kind of morale boosting recommendations that you've seen might be impactful to keep everybody's spirits up, as well as you want them to be productive, but you also want their spirits to be high and get through this together?
Yeah, great question. And I think that first of all, one of the most important things to do is to engage in some way, no matter what. Make sure that employees are talking to one another and and that they're hearing from leadership within the organization. I think that makes a difference. But beyond that, there are some creative things. Again, having contests. I know that businesses are having at times their employees send in pictures of their kids doing something fun, funny, family pictures, family engagements, and sharing that personal moment. Employers are starting to do virtual happy hours. I've talked to a couple of companies that are doing a video conference, and whether it's your favorite glass of milk or your favorite adult beverage, sit around for 30 minutes or so and just kind of say what's going on and enjoy one another's company. So virtual happy hours. And then even some folks are doing games and contests, and some folks are reporting in on ideas to exercise and to stay positive during this difficult challenge. So I think idea generation, but most importantly, person to person, not physical contact, but person to person emotional contact. Does that help, Russ?
Absolutely. Sorry, I had to unmute. No, that's great, because that's the big challenge we all have is like you covered a lot of great points, by the way. In your presentation, I think it's good to continue. I see the next couple of weeks being more of the drudge, right? Because the excitement, the fear, all that's going to be sort of settling into, now or, the future and the uncertainty of what coming out of here is going to look like. So keeping them focused is important. Thank you.
Well, and I even read that positively fuels productivity. And so it's important that we, especially in a leadership position, I mean, I've again had the benefit of spending nearly 20 years in the Army. And, as an officer, one of the most important things you have to do is to motivate your troops to go into harm's way. And that's a difficult thing to do. But if you stay positive, people are willing to go in whatever direction you need them to go in. And it's important that we stay positive, and understand that no communication is bad, because when people don't hear from their leaders, then they begin to wonder if the problem's bigger than what it really is. So stay positive. It's imperative. Well, if there's nothing else, again, I'd be happy to send our slides out, and I really appreciate the opportunity to present to members of the chamber, and appreciate everyone that participated.
Frank, you made a lot of really, really good points. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pat. I appreciate you and look forward to hearing from you.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just so everybody knows, we recorded this session, so we're going to try to put that out on our website. If you have others that you feel would be benefit from viewing it, we're going to do that. And obviously, Frank's contact information is right there, and I think it's there's nothing more important than your employees right now. And Frank, we appreciate everything you've went through today and what you're doing to keep us all focused on that.
Well, I just wrap up with a quote from Margaret Mead that, if a few good, caring people work hard to change the world, they can do that, because indeed that's all that ever has. And so if we just work together, we definitely can get through this, and not only get through it, but actually thrive through it. And I'm excited about that. And I think, West Virginia has an opportunity to really be the shining city on the hill.